Hey everybody, it's Mike Erre with a tired Bonnie and an exhausted Tim. This is our third attempt at having this conversation, and because we're recording this on the Sunday of we heard about the El Paso shooting Saturday night, and then we woke up to the Dayton, Ohio shooting. And it's just, I've been so heavy and so kind of weirdly emotional today. So I've ranted for 2 episodes that we've deleted because it just wasn't very helpful. I feel better. Tim is in a hot room with no AC. And how hot is it up there right now in Auburn?
It was in the high 90s today. Okay,
yeah. So there's no ventilation and there's no air conditioning for Tim. And then Bonnie, are you back? Are you back in your home?
No,
or are
I'm
you
on vacation.
Oh, that's right. You're in Cali, but you were in El Paso the day before all this went down.
I was. We drove here, so we were in El Paso the day before.
Ugh. So here. I want to set the table, and then I will have a much less intense conversation about this. Because I think I was offending. I was literally trying to offend everybody on the planet. So I think I'm calmer. But here's the thing. So, and other facts may come out. So there are 51 that have been shot. What is it? 29. 29 that are dead. And my goodness, I just sit and I go, yeah, 29 dead, 53 others injured, as young as 2 and as old as 82. And then, yeah, Bonnie, you just mentioned what happened in Chicago, which hasn't gotten nearly the same sort of press. And so I think there is a collective like enraged helplessness that we all feel. And then you add another layer to it, at least the El Paso case. It seems like this was racially motivated. This seems like this guy was a white nationalist who wrote, so he wrote a manifesto. And so, you know, why should the devil have all the good manifestos? Jesus wrote a better one, called the Sermon on the Mount, but it was, I'm trying to find it. Shoot. He said something. He was doing this as, shoot. Let me find it. Hold on. Play the Jeopardy music. Oh yeah, here it is.
I want to play your crickets instead.
Do the crickets. Perfect. This is from the Killer's Manifesto. This attack is a response to the Hispanic invasion of Texas. They are the instigators, not me. I'm simply defending my country from cultural and ethnic replacement brought on by an invasion. Now, folks were quick to notice that some of this language has been echoed by our current president. There's a clip floating around the interwebs of a rally in Texas where he's calling this an invasion. And he, asks rhetorically, kind of, what should we do to stop these people? And evidently someone in the crowd yells, shoot them. And everyone has a hearty laugh. And until this guy who drives 9 hours to do just that. So there's a whole lot sitting here. And I guess what I want to talk about today is what are all the ways we should not respond to this. Right there, I want to get to ways that we can and should respond, but I think there are a whole host of ways that are really not effective ways for Jesus people to operate out of. Does that make sense? So this is Mike and maybe Bonnie and Tim, but we're not sure if they will even agree. This is Mike's list of how not to respond to this latest shooting. All right. Number 1, I'm going to throw out, we should not respond by saying thoughts and prayers. First of all, that well-worn cliche, is I think does more harm than good. And I read this quote by Miroslav Volf today, and again, I don't know where it's from. It's on social media, so I know it's true. And even if he didn't say it, this is what I believe. There is something deeply hypocritical about praying for a problem you are unwilling to resolve. And so I feel like just the very standard Christian, hey, our thoughts are with El Paso and Dayton, and we're praying. But believe me, I'm a huge prayer guy. Like, I believe prayer changes things, and I'm not denigrating prayer in any way. I'm just saying is a way to, as a way for Jesus followers to comment as our country is mourning, I think it's lost any effectiveness. And I think instead speaks to what Volf is getting at, which is which God isn't looking for people to sit passively by who pray for things that they actually have say over. Now, we might not have say over national policy, or we might not have say over things in Washington, D.C., but we have say over how we run our house and how we treat the others in our lives, and who we share meals with, and so I feel like, and then we have a say, obviously, at the ballot box. We have a say in our political discourse. So I don't think thoughts and prayers is a worthy inclusion into the standard. Here's how Christians should respond when national tragedy hits. Would you guys agree with that?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Mike's number 2, and I'm literally making these up as we go. Number 2 way not to respond is by just repeating political memes and partisan talking points to each other in a shout fest. My personal opinion is that it's predictable, and it's as predictable as the mass shootings that are happening and the fact that nothing ever changes, right? The willingness of Jesus followers to write other Jesus followers off because of disagreement politically. Now, I'm not talking about disagreement over murder, right? Any Jesus follower knows that racism, that nationalism, that white nationalism and supremacy, that is totally and fundamentally opposed to the work of God in the world. It is anti-Christ. It is incompatible with Jesus following. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't people who start that way and who get redeemed into something much better, but it does mean that Jesus will never, ever, 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 ever land on the side of denigrating the Imago Dei in another person. You just never will. I mean, you can't, right. That should be baseline. But then, even though that should be baseline, the conversation immediately drifts into partisan talking points about gun control, not about gun control. It's a sin problem. It's not a sin problem. Guns don't kill people, and it's just the same rehash. And so one of the things I don't think that helps is the same rehashing of the memes and the talking points that have been shared, every big shooting that happens. I just don't think, it's not that there isn't truth there. It's that I think Jesus followers have to play by an entirely different set of rules and have an entirely different set of aims than just reinforcing the fractured and divisive politics of our age. Does that make sense?
Yes.
This is way more agreement than I got in the last 2 episodes that we deleted. So literally, I'm literally just having this conversation with Bonnie and Tim, and the rest of you they've been putting up with my nonsense for an hour.
I kind of want to just put little 5-second clips from the previous 2 recordings at the end of this one as just to see the angsty Mike ramp down.
Well, evidently I needed to work some stuff through. I should have gone to therapy before this recording. Absolutely. All right. So I don't think those are 2 good ways. Third way I don't think is helpful is a passive, people are always going to be sinful, and there's nothing really we can do to change things. I don't think that is in any way the kingdom way either. I hear that sometimes from people who are just like, listen, evil's always going to be with us, no matter how much we legislate. You can't legislate an evil heart. And to some degree, I agree with that sin is sin. But then I look at what other countries have done, and I'm like, well, it seems like there is something we could do. Um,
Something's
and
happened.
and I don't understand why we can't even have sensible conversation. I mean, the fact that Jesus followers who all agree that every single person is made in the image of Imago Dei, or in the image of God, can't sit down and say, okay, I'm really worried about the government taking my guns, but I realize the status quo can't continue, and progressives who would in a heartbeat ban everything, come to the table and say, I realize the vast majority of gun owners are peaceful and good and da 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 da. I mean, there has to be something that overrides our either love or hatred of this stuff in order to sit down and have meaningful conversation. And I'm just saying the church needs to be that place. But what instead it just often just echoes the same points that are everywhere else. Does that
Right.
make sense so far?
Yeah.
Yes.
So thoughts and prayers, not recommending. No, think, sure, and pray, absolutely. But I wouldn't announce that. It just seems so token these days. Secondly, whatever my second point was, I agree with that. And then the third point, I didn't write any of these down because I'm making them up. And the third point is this we're not to be passive in the face of this. Right. We have the privilege to live in a kingdom of the world that gives us say so. And I think it's important that we exercise our say-so in Jesus-y ways, which means we don't get to write off our political opponents. We don't get to not love our enemies. We don't get to not bless those who persecute us, right? I mean, I feel like that has to be said because no one believes that we should actually do that as Jesus followers, right? That you can actually engage in
Right.
political discourse and have strong political opinion and so honor other people. Now, I'm not talking about honoring the killer. I'm not talking about any of that. I just mean as we talk about this stuff and how we need to fix this stuff and why does my kids have to go through active shooter training now, there has to be a space in our culture where people who agree on something much more important can come together and at least process ways forward on something that we would agree is massively important. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what about you guys? What do you guys think? Is there anything you would add to the list of how not to respond? And again, I mean, we're not saying this from any position of expertise or whatever. I was just thinking about it today, because I'm driving to how we should respond. And that sort of brings me back to, okay, well, what are the ways that I'm tempted to, but I don't think are very helpful ways? So Bonnie, you got anything?
I want to say that as a Jesus follower, we're not allowed to step out of the arena.
Yes.
So we're not allowed to say, that's not my problem.
Yes.
I don't own a gun, or I don't have kids in school, or I don't.
I'm
know
not
any
racist.
friends. I'm not racist. Yeah, exactly. That's not my problem. So therefore, I don't have to do anything.
I like that. Tim, your thoughts on Bonnie's thoughts?
Mine are similar to that. I think it enrages me every time I go to church on Sunday morning and atrocities like this are not even mentioned.
Yeah.
And it's just been a thorn in my side for a while. At the church I was at in Pasadena for a while, we started doing this thing called Prayers of the People, where somebody got up and we played this very specific, very simple worship song in between someone praying about current big issues in a very nonpartisan way, just praying about the actual suffering of the issue and stuff. And I thought it was profound. It became like a huge piece of church for me. So it really bothers me when the church just doesn't even react.
Right.
It kills me.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. That's good. And let's just let's push that just a little deeper because, I mean, I can hear people, social justice is a threat and we shouldn't take church service to deal with those things. And I personally could not disagree more with the sentiment that says that this isn't directly in the business of the gospel. And we are given the ministry of reconciliation. We have great and good news to proclaim in the middle of all this stuff, and hard news, as Jesus confronts our idolatries. And I just think what a wasted opportunity for people who are desperately looking for a coherent story to live by, to rob them of any framework to process this outside of Republicans bad, Democrats good, or gun control good, non-gun control bad. I mean, okay, but there's a bigger framework to operate within. So I absolutely agree with you. You can't step out of the arena. I think that's really well said, you two. Excellent. And I also don't think, I read one infamous Christian commentator that said, hey, maybe God allows this to happen to drive us back to him. And I'm like, well, so when you're raped, God's allowing that to happen so that you, the rapee, are driven back to God. I mean, that really? Is that?
I just like, why do we have to believe in a God that is like, I'm just going to always cause awful things so that people see me? Like, why can't the script be flipped? Why can't it be the beautiful thing? Like, where are we getting that from?
Oh man, that is a religious hangover from 200 years of all kinds of stuff.
I'm just tired of it.
Yeah. Well, and it's so funny. None of us would raise our kids that way. And again, we're not the model, but Jesus even points to this. He says, if you who are evil know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think as Jesus followers, we're not allowed to just be cliche and just write thoughts and prayers and think we're done. I don't think we offer simplistic answers that this is just a sin problem, because it seems like it's not a sin problem in other countries. It seems like there is a way to help, and we should explore that. I think the other way we should not respond is by claiming our constitutional rights over and against the privilege we have as Jesus followers to give up our rights for the sake of others. Right? I mean, there is this central, Gombas has talked about it a ton, this central passage, here's how you treat other people, right? Just the same way that Jesus Christ, who emptied himself, he didn't claim his privileges. I mean, it just seems like if you're going to argue, hey, we should yell and shame women going into abortion clinics because we could save one child, then you got to make the argument the other way, that if common sense gun control, even though it might infringe on our constitutional freedom, and I'm not even sure it does, but let's say it did, even if it did, wouldn't we rather do that if it would save one's kid? And so I think the worst way to respond is to say, hey, no, you as a Jesus follower, nobody better come and take my guns. I just think that's idolatry. That is, and I have my own idols. Guns aren't one of them, but I don't think our constitutional rights equal biblical rights, and so I think that if there are measures that would actually help, I think that Jesus followers, even if we have guns, should be at the head of the line, willing to compromise for the sake of the one.
Right.
That's my personal opinion. I know people disagree with that, and I'd love to have a reasonable conversation with somebody that just says, "Well, here's why I need my guns," and I have my dad's old. He was a police detective, so I have his old pistol, and it's never. So I have one. So I have to say that I have one. But
I have a katana blade that's inside of a bamboo pole. Dude,
that's still going to be so handy for zombies.
Like 80 Nerf guns.
There you go.
That will be very handy when you babysit children.
I don't have to babysit. I have children.
So right now,
again, that I'm in my 30s.
Right now, you have children, Bonnie.
Jeez.
So
to your point, though, what about also a conversation of why do you need certain guns?
Right. Why?
Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You're saying get rid of everything. I think you're saying like why do you need these ones that continually are killing people in mass shootings?
Well, they said the Dayton guy. They said they shot the Dayton guy 30 seconds in, and he still killed 9 people.
Right.
And so the whole like, hey, if we just have good people there with guns, this will dissuade bad people with guns. I'm like, well,
nope.
I'm not sure that's going to work. But again, I don't want to get focused on policy because there are some Jesus-loving people who absolutely will argue against gun control, And I don't think this goes back to that second point. I don't think just shouting talking points at each other is the way Jesus people need to press forward on this. But okay, so if that's how not to, then how would you? I mean, doesn't that, Tim, you have a pensive look on your face. What are you thinking about right there?
I was thinking about shouting or shaming people going into abortion clinics or whatever, and if that's comparable to shaming people out of guns. And it's like, I just don't want to approach it that way at all. Like it's like, what's the point of shouting and shaming? I remember there was these women at our church a long time ago, and it was a conservative church, and they started a place that helped counsel and walk alongside of young women, or just women in general who were pregnant and thinking about having abortions. Mm-hmm. And just kind of being involved in their lives and showing them an alternate route. If they decided to take the other route, holding their hand through that. But like being involved in these women's lives, and I was like, and I think I mentioned this before in a previous episode, that idea that Jim Wallace said about MLK changing the course of the wind. Yeah. And like going ahead of the issue rather than just like beating your head against the issue, like going to the beginning and trying to influence change at the root level, like pulling the root out of it. I'm not interested in and I think you're saying this too, the shouting and shaming and that kind of stuff. It's just a bunch of screaming and
exactly
and no results.
But both sides will justify it.
Right.
And what I'm trying to say is, I don't think as Jesus people, speaking to other Jesus people, but speaking to anybody, but let's just keep it within the Jesus people thing, that we get to write anybody off. And and so when I sit and I'm like, yes, of course we denounce white nationalism and we denounce murderers. And we absolutely desire to bring heaven to earth so that there is no racism. Of course, all that's given. But there's still a sense in which the way that you want to accomplish that is by hating white nationalists and being so angry at them, you cease being able to bless or pray for those who are your enemies. Then I would suggest we've lost the Jesus way. Right? I mean, this was the hardest part. From what I understand of MLK's MO, this was the thing that had to have been the hardest part. You have every justification in the world, if you're that community, to respond to violence with violence, and to stand there and to insist on the nonviolent approach. I mean, it just is insane. And I just think Jesus is insane enough to sit. Anytime there's self-righteousness on the right or the left, to sit and say, well, let me tell you the parable of the good white nationalist. Right? Here's the person you say can never be your neighbor. Well, let me tell you about the story of the good white supremacist, and go and do likewise. Right? In the same way that Jesus, there was this picture years ago of Jesus washing the feet of Osama bin Laden in a mall. And it was horribly offensive to conservative Christians, which I was like, come on, man, that's of course. He freaking washed Judas's feet, of course. Right. All that is to say, that there has to be a way in which we as Jesus followers, even through the disagreements about how policy should be enacted, can sit down and we should be like modeling for the world, because we believe in the imago Dei in every person, and we believe that redemption is possible. We believe that sin is real, and we believe that grace is true, right? It seems like we ought to be the community who should be able to figure out how to process this stuff in a way that moves us forward. And I just don't see it happen when all we're doing is doing sound bites towards each other. And I mean, I just wish that the Trump supporters could look at Trump and rebuke him. Imagine if Franklin Graham, looked at Donald Trump and said, dude, this is way too far. You're talking about image bearers. These are not people from shithole countries. These are not invaders. These are people to be treated with respect and dignity, because they're made in the freaking image of God, who would do anything for them. Right. I mean, it'd have so much power if freaking Republicans would not just be silent when Trump does this crap, because it just sounds like he's contributing and emboldening this stuff. And on the other side, I mean, if and when Trump does something good, to have progressive never Trumpers say, hey, don't like the guy, but this was actually a good thing. Like that sort of ability to sift and sort beyond just the partisan labels is so sorely lacking, and I so want it for a community. You know what I mean? Dang it.
Yeah.
That's the thing that fires me up. So let's go to, all right, so how should we respond? All right, if we've listed how not to, I'll start, and then you guys, because this whole conversation is new, and even though we've had an hour's worth of previous conversation, it was me ranting, which is so funny, Tim. You should not ever unearth those rantings. They were incoherent. There were cuss words. But I feel so much better now.
You seem better.
Okay, that's awesome. I was so like emotional, like whoa, I didn't know where that was coming from. So how should we respond? So my first thing is obviously we lament. And lament means you tell the truth. Lament doesn't mean you minimize it. Lament doesn't mean you deny it. Lament doesn't mean you explain it away. Lament means you name it, and you name it against the back view of a good and loving and powerful God who has said and who has acted, if you believe the scriptures, in a way that says he wants the good for humanity. In other words, lament, biblical lament, isn't, dude, freaking I'm over God because there's no way he would allow this. It's like, God, you're good and you're powerful, and you've promised that you will bring about the restoration of all things. So why in the heck is this happening? Right? It's not, it is telling the truth against the backdrop of the beauty and the majesty of God. And if you want laments, just read the freaking Psalms. They're just all over the place. Because we wouldn't lament, right? If God wasn't real, then why would we lament? It would just be the way the world is. But the fact that we mourn, and the fact that we grieve, and the fact that we protest, and the fact that we're enraged, that is all echoing Imago Dei. That is all echoing the image of God in us. Absolutely. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And so lament is fundamental. It is one of the few unique things the church has to offer the world. A language and a story from within which to lament the senseless evil in our world. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. And Bonnie is frozen again. We're just going to keep going, Tim.
I can hear you.
I think that one of the things that I've been thinking about is I saw a article today that said that there was a lot of families who had loved ones that were killed in El Paso who were afraid to go be with their families because they're afraid of being caught and deported. Oh. And I just blew my mind, and I'm just, so I feel like I want to, I lament, I grieve, but I also just I don't know how to come alongside those folks who are just in an impossible place.
Right.
In an impossible level of grief that I don't understand. And I think part of it, as three white folks talking about this, is just to denounce there's not a piece of this that we condone, we despise it. It's not. Yeah. I think a lot of white folks need to be more vocal about no.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, Tim. I think that's beautiful. That's not, to me, that's way different from virtue signaling. To me, right. that is standing, I have dear friends, and so much of Vox, you spoke there today, Bonnie, right. We're non-white folks, and I think they need to hear other voices saying you're not invaders, and we don't feel like this is a cultural invasion. In fact, the Great Commission was for Jesus followers to go to the world, and we're so privileged in America that the world's coming to us. And so, there's just this incredibly profound sense that the nations are coming, and we have incredibly good kingdom work to do. That I don't mean just sit and evangelize and hand out tracts. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about introducing people to the flourishing kind of life that comes when communities gather around those that are marginalized, to really hear them and empower them and to support them, and regardless of whether or not they buy what we're selling or not.
Right.
And so so lament I think is so absolutely critical. The protesting, and I love what you're saying about just the speaking up, just saying absolutely this is awful, and it's so not Jesus. It's so not Jesus. And any element of the Christian movement that has been co-opted by white nationalism has to be repudiated quickly, repeatedly, and severely. All right, so that's a good one. Bondi, you have one to add to the list? How should we respond?
Well, I think keep going.
Okay.
Because I want to pause there. I think what you said was, I'm still like that really sunk into me when you said lament is telling the truth. Because that in itself is a call and an invitation and a responsibility. If we're going to grieve something, we have to name it and we have to call it out and we have to tell the truth about why it's sad or why we're grieving it.
Yeah.
And so I love that you said that. So that's sinking in for a minute.
No, but that's true with our own personal confession, right? I mean,
right.
There's this big tradition in the Bible of confessing, and all that means is you're telling the truth. But it's against the backdrop of this beautiful God. And
because I don't think we do that. I think we lament and something is sad and it's surfacey and it's not against the backdrop of a beautiful God. So I just love how you defined that.
Oh, well, thank you, Bonnie.
You're welcome.
In an hour and a half, that was maybe the first thing you've liked.
Not true.
Well, no. I was speaking to the quality of the first couple of recordings. Now, these are going to go down in history as the B-sides of the Vox podcast. So lament is one, and lament also means that there is a place and time for our silence. And now I'm not saying, because this is held in tension with Tim's point that hey, we do need to speak and we do need to show solidarity. But there is a time where we don't give easy, cliche, trite answers. That's part of what lament means. We just sit with it. Another thing I would say going forward is that the Church of Jesus has to be a place where people from every political persuasion can sit and disagree, but still process under the lordship of Jesus. In other words, when Jesus, washed the feet of the disciples, and here's a zealot, and here's a tax collector, and here's Judas that's going to betray him, there's something bigger than their political disagreements that's bringing them together. And the church, doggone it, has to be a place where that actually happens. Right. Where Trump supporters are comforted and challenged, where never Trumpers are comfortable or comforted and challenged, and they're not comforted and challenged on either direction because we're sitting having political discussions. They're comforted and challenged simply because we're looking at Jesus, realizing that wherever self-righteousness resides, he'd go after it. Right? Doesn't matter. If your guns are more important than
right.
compassion for your neighbor, he'd call it out. If your being right is more important than allowing people to be in process and not loving them into their future, he'd call that out. I mean, he just would call out both sides of the way we talk about this all the time. And again, I don't think that's a coward way. I'm not talking about a middle way between two extremes. I'm talking about an entirely different way of
right.
being in the world. And the church has to embrace it. The church doesn't get to just Christianize political positions. That's not how it works, right? The church transcends this in such a powerful way. I mean, Jesus was so clear, man. He says it clearest in Luke, and these words kill me. Love your enemies, do good to them, lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great and you will be children of the Most High. In other words, the defining mark. So whenever you're called a child of something in the Bible, it means that you reflect the character of what you're a child of. So the James and John were called sons of thunder. They were two disciples of Jesus who had tempers, and they were called sons of thunder because they embodied thunder.
It's my metal band name.
The Sons of Thunder. So when Jesus says, then you will be children of the Most High, and then he says, because God is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked, Be merciful as your Father is merciful. In other words, we don't get to write off groups of people. Now, that doesn't mean we don't stand against them. It doesn't mean we don't fight against their ideologies. Absolutely. But it means that as we're doing this, what's not supposed to happen is that we grow into anger, bitter people who could not, if ever confronted with somebody who actually believed the ideology we're criticizing, I could not actually sit down and have a meal with them and respect the imago Dei in them, right? That's the goal. Right. That's what maturity looks like. So for me, I mean, the idea to begin to embody in a polis, a church, a family, a household, that we can have very passionate political disagreements, but those are secondary to Jesus followings. Because here's the thing I really want to get at, Bonnie and Tim. And I know you disagree with this, at least how I say this, Bonnie, so please push back on it. Okay. But it seems to me that at the root of some of our political passion is the fact that we don't actually trust that Jesus' ways kind of work and win in the world. And what I mean by that is there's so much writing on who is in the White House and who is on the Supreme Court and who is in Congress. And there's so much writing on all of the political rhetoric that we can't help but be discipled by it all in a direction that does nothing but reinforce the way the world works, instead of challenge it and embody a better way. And so for me to to believe that the way of reconciliation, that the way of forgiveness, that the way of humility, that the way of giving up my rights and not claiming them, that the way of being gracious to those people who I cannot stand, the way of blessing those who persecute Christians and me, that way, that the slow, subtle way of the kingdom is actually going to work. Because I'm so energized around, we've got to do this or our country's in trouble, and we've got to do that and our country's in trouble, and we're heading for this war. I mean, I even read some Christian commentators saying we're heading for a war. If Trump loses, his people will riot, and if he wins, others will riot. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe that happens. But the Church of Jesus should be not at all, in any way, shape, or form, a part of those conversations. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I feel like there's a deep repentance that has to go on in the church, not just a lament, but a deep repentance, at least for me, as I sit and I say, how do I live in a way that doesn't just embody the fracture and the noise of the world? You know what I mean? That says... Yeah. That says, if I'm ever seated across from a white nationalist, I don't get to slap them and I don't get to throw something at them, right? I just don't get to do that. Now, if they're shooting people, I will do, in the name of Jesus. And I know nonviolent pacifists will disagree, but I think there is a place for restraining evil. But if I'm sitting next to somebody, or if they're spewing hate to somebody, I'm absolutely going to speak up. Nietzsche had this great quote, and it just comes to mind whenever I watch and listen to these political conversations. He says, and he says it way more Old Englishy than I'm going to say it, but beware when fighting the dragon, lest you become the dragon you're fighting. And I've always thought that's what Jesus is warning against. Yes, of course, be politically active. Yes, of course, we are privileged to live in a place where our voice is encouraged. Hallelujah. Do that. But in your doing it, if we just become, just reflections and mirrors of the political, cemented, fossilized positions of our culture, then we've done nothing to bring to represent or bring the beauty and majesty of Jesus further into the world. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and I don't mean do you agree. I just mean was that coherent? Because previous attempts maybe lacked some coherence. So anyway, Bonnie, Tim, anything you guys want to add before we close?
Yeah, I want to say one thing. I don't disagree with what you said there. I think it's I love you for this, but I think it's a little too idealistic. But also, I've been known to be called a pessimist, so that could be my problem. But there's one thing I do want to add, because like I loved what you said about like if you were sitting down next to somebody that you hated or that you disagreed with, because that in and of itself is totally subversive, right?
Yes.
And I mean, and part of it is like ending racism, ending hate, ending any of these things we talk about starts first in our homes and in our neighborhoods. And so,
boom,
we have to do that. So I loved that. But I also want to just throw this in there. So like, remember, I think this is like, I don't know, 15 years ago or something, you preached at Rock Harbor, and I've heard so many sermons, podcasts, everything, and this one has stuck for me.
Whoa!
Because I know.
I'm thrilled that one did.
At least one. Okay,
at least one.
Probably more. But the reason why it stuck so hard is because it changed things for me. It reoriented things for me. And what you said was, when people are always viewing God's wrath and God's love, and what we assume is that consequences, when we're behaving a certain way and consequences happen, that's God's wrath.
Right.
And we've heard that so many times, like, we had a flood because this city is this way, or whatever it is.
Right.
And that's God's wrath. And what you said was, no, when he intervenes, that's actually his love.
Yeah.
And the truth is something that's going through my head, is that someone who's a white nationalist, or someone who hates white nationalists in terms of like, and becomes the dragon, but somebody who is hating people so much that they are shooting people up and doing these things, they're living in their own type of hell.
Right.
Right? Like
already.
Every single day. Already. Yep. They're already there.
Yeah.
And so when we aren't passive, and when we step in, and when we do something, whether it be with our vote or our voice or whatever it is, we are intervening. And what if that is the love?
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, we aren't becoming the dragon. We are saying, hey, we're stopping this hell both in you, because I see you as an image bearer and you don't have to live this way.
Correct.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And the hell that is then being experienced from the rest of us.
Absolutely. No, I love that, Bonnie. Yes. That's all I have to say. I agree, as you guys have said several times. No, that's so good. I agree with my own sermon. Excellent.
You should.
It's not true. That's not true of all of them, but that's true of that one for sure.
That one's good. I mean, I just think, because like you said, if we can view and go, oh my gosh, they're living in their own type of hell, I think to your point, it makes loving our enemies, it reframes that. And it makes it easier, because it doesn't make it passive.
Right.
It still makes it actionable, and it still makes it stopping things that are spreading death and hatred and dying. But it also says you are living in your own type of hell, and you are an image bearer, and I want to stop you from living in that way, because God has more for you. You know what I mean? So,
oh yeah, absolutely. That, and again, this way of being doesn't mean we're passive. Far from it. We're actually super active in this. But it's coming from a center, a heart place that says that at the end of the day, there's a cliched saying I've heard so many times. At the end of the day, that the inevitable and inexorable movements of the kingdom is not dependent upon me getting my political way. And again, that doesn't mean we're not passionate or not active. It just means that we're doing it as a citizen of another kingdom, right? That we're and so I don't know. I just think in this conversation, Jesus would come and he would invite us all to repent, but we'd all be called to repent from different things, and nobody gets off without without a call to an invitation to put off the old way of doing things and to put on something new. And now that doesn't mean we don't condemn stuff. Of course we will. We absolutely must. It just means though that I'm still the biggest sinner in the room. And that there were, like, I was once at a fireworks display when I lived in Ohio years and years ago. I think it was in high school. and I was with me and two buddies. We were all white. And we walked through a crowd at this big 4th of July fireworks thing in Columbus. And we were jumped by I don't know, it was probably like 10, 11, 12 young black men. And they had canes and whips and chains. And they just started, as we were walking through, they just started wailing on us. And obviously it hurt. Obviously we ran. The good news is that there were police kind of on every corner, and so we just ran right to them. We didn't endure this for very long. But there was a while in my young heart where I would get really fidgety if I were ever in a crowd and I was around like a lot of black people. Just quite honestly, like I just had this nervousness, and so Jesus has been so gracious over the course of years, to not only have me repent from that, but to come to a place now where, like an all white church is boring and horrible. And man, what was I saying? Where was I going with this? This was like a deep story, and I
talking about being the biggest sinner in the room.
Yes, thank you, Bonnie. You rescued it. You rescued the podcast again. And so when I'm gonna jump on people for racism, like there's a legitimate, like I have to say, you know what? There have been times, like I remember when I first moved from Ohio to Southern California, and I'm used to all white people. And shockingly, Southern California, LA County was not all white people. And I was super intimidated and super scared. This was just after the Rodney King riots way back in the 90s. And I was just freaked out about everything. And so anytime like I'm talking about stuff like this, that I still have to go before the Lord and say, Lord, and maybe more recent stuff I'm not even aware of. I still have to go before the Lord and say, Lord, this is true of me. I've had to work through my own sort of automatic filters. I feel like, so anytime I'm just wanting to jump on, even a group, there's still that check in me that's like, yeah, but crap, I maybe haven't thought all the way there, but there have been moments in my dark heart that I've had other thoughts. And so I don't know, it seems like you can come to a conversation about stuff like this from a whole different place if that's kind of what you're carrying into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Should we even air this story? I don't even know. But that biggest sinner in the room thing it really haunts me. Because I was flipping through the Sermon on the Mount today, and it just confronts me. I mean, I was intending on reading it as an indictment on Christians that are lame, and I was just super indicted by it. You know what I mean? Which is what we talk about. So anyway, all right, Seth, come here. Seth has been waiting patiently on the stairs. Do you want to say hi to Mr. Tim?
Hi.
And hi, Miss Bonnie.
Hi, Bonnie.
Hi.
So, Seth, what do we want to do? Do we want to end the podcast by singing a song?
Yes.
What song do you want to sing?
Foxy.
What does the fox say?
Yes.
Okay. Evidently, this is going to be our benediction. Seth loves this song, so let me.
That phone.
Yeah, we'll do it on Daddy's phone, but I want you to sing along with it, okay?
With Dad.
I'll sing it with you, absolutely.
With Tim.
This is Tim. I don't know that Tim knows this song.
Yeah.
There it is. All right, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Now this is a Seth and Mike special. Can you guys hear that?
A little bit, yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
Ready?
Let's go.
You gotta sing it.
Dogs
go moo, cat goes meow, bird goes tweet, and
mouse is sweet. Cat
goes
moo,
moo,
cat goes slow,
and the elephant goes toot, does it and fish go blow. Oh, ow, ow, ow. Sing it.
The sun.
No one knows. Sing it.
What did the fox say? The fox say, pow, pow, pow. Fellas, the fox say.
All right. Oh, hallelujah. We're done as Tim is looking up the legal ramifications for
Yeah, if a rocket ship.
for a rocket ship.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know.
yeah,
All right. Well, listen, do you want to say goodbye to the Vox?
yeah, yes.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any disagreements, any concerns, please email Tim at voxpodcast.com.
Comment down below foxes.com.
Yep.
Once again, Vox position coming a podcast.
Yes, they're coming on the podcast. Shaky heart.
We're gonna say goodbye.
Thank you. Bye. All right, Voxers, this has been a totally eventful evening for your your trinity of hosts, and the Lord of hosts.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, this has been weird. So anyway,
Yeah.
Tim's going to try to make something of this. We love him, and we love you guys.
I love Poppy.
And we love Poppy.
I love Pops.
I love the Pops.
I love Pops.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.